Our last but certainly not least next highlight for you all today is our 4-H after school education science out of school agent Toby Swafford, and I just want to say that we saved this for last for a reason. You will understand that here in a second because Toby does everything hands-on, and he's going to talk a little bit about what he does, but even better yet, he's going to show you what he does in the classroom with a bunch of fifth graders. So everybody dig deep into your inner child and help me welcome Toby Swafford.
Hi everyone, my name is Toby Swafford. I'm the 4-H STEM agent for Larimer County. Now on your tables you might have noticed that there are a few things that you could play with. One of those things is actually a piece of paper and a washer. And we're going to use those as a substitute for a dollar bill and a quarter because I don't have that kind of budget to work with. So what we're going to be doing is learning how to actually balance a quarter on the edge of a dollar bill. Is everyone ready? Gotten the first step of taking your dollar bill, folding it in half. Because folds sometimes can give us a nice place to balance. So if you take your dollar bill, fold it in half, we get a nice point. You can put your coin up on top. Now, that's a way of getting your coin to rest on top of that dollar bill. I'm also seeing some other interesting folds, but the real challenge was to get the coin to sit on the edge of a straight dollar bill. Aha! So, if you had your fold and you've got your coin placed up there, very carefully take your dollar bill by the top two corners and straighten it out. And you might notice that your coin actually starts to balance itself.
Oh, that's kind of cool.
That is kind of cool. So, it's easy once you know the secret. There are lots of ways to get there. But sometimes having that little helping hand can be extremely powerful. What our program is designed to do is to be that helping hand. Now we see science is one of those things that is listed as being very, very important. According to the National Science Teacher Association, high-quality elementary science education is essential for establishing a sound foundation of learning in later grades, instilling a wonder of and enthusiasm for science that lasts a lifetime, and in addressing the critical need for a well-informed citizenry and society. Those important goals. Yeah. The reality kicks in, though. In many schools and districts, elementary science instruction often takes a back seat to math and reading and receives little time in the school day. Many elementary educators do not receive an adequate amount of professional learning themselves to gain the confidence they need to teach the science. How does that shake out? Well, in the 2018 National Study of Science and Mathematics Education, it was reported that many elementary school teachers do not provide science instruction even on a weekly basis. It's usually the first thing that gets backburnered in the classroom because the teachers themselves don't always feel comfortable addressing the subject. because they think it's too hard. Until we learn the secret sometimes. It's important. One of the reasons we hear so much about STEM and have been hearing about STEM since the 1980s is that the job field is growing rapidly. STEM jobs have grown 6 times faster than non-STEM jobs in the last decade. They also tend to earn about twice as much money. A year or so ago in the Denver Post, it was noted that for any STEM professional that lost a job in the Denver metro area, there were 15.5 jobs waiting for them. "18 minutes a day." That's the average that the students that are getting exposure to science are receiving in their elementary school classrooms. And that's the schools that the kids are getting science on a regular basis. On average, 40% receive less than a complete hour of science each and every week. And only 1/3 of elementary teachers feel prepared to teach science. How does that shake out statewide? 35.9% of the students in the state of Colorado this last year met or exceeded expectations for science in 5th grade. 64% are performing below expectations. Here in Larimer County, news is a little bit better. We've got the information from the Poudre School District. I'm still waiting on some things from the state for Thompson School District. But 51.7% of the students in PSD met or exceeded expectations, better than half. 48.3% are performing below expectations still. That's where we kind of come in. For a lot of the students that the Science Out of School program targets, we are targeting 3rd through 5th grade, primarily low-income, disadvantaged youth. They're the students that during the school day, when specials happen, when the cool STEM activities are going on, a lot of our youth are the kids that get pulled out to do remedial reading or math. Out of school experiences are extremely important in developing that love of science, that understanding, that comfort with it. Informal settings provide students with the freedom to explore and position themselves in STEM disciplines as well. A lot of the times we'll see kids that will come up and say, "We did the rock cycle 3 weeks ago in our class, but today I got it." They have the time to process it, and I love that. I even like it better when they come up and they say, "Oh, Mr. Toby, we did the rock cycle in school today, and I knew all the answers because of you." And I said, no. It's because of you. Yeah, I just was there to help. You actually absorbed all that information. And yeah, to see the look on their face when they get to be the rock star and they know the answers, whether it's sharing what they've had the chance to process with their fellow teammates in one of our club programs, or they get to be a rock star in their classroom. So, Larimer County, 4-H, Science Out of School. We like to do a lot of things the 4-H way, which is learning by doing what? By doing, yeah, getting out there. I'm not, like I said, I'm not a podium person. I'm not really a slide presentation kind of guy. It's not rocket science. Okay, it is rocket science. We can. Hello. How many rocket scientists do we have out there? Any rocket scientists? No, okay. I have a feeling there's probably a lot more rocket scientists out there than you're giving yourself credit for. How many of you been sitting in a fine dining establishment? You get your straw, comes in a nice paper wrapper, you start to take the wrapper off, and you decide you're going to do something. What do? Yeah, how many people have blown into a straw and made a wrapper launch? Rocket science. You blew into that straw. Where did the air go? Into the wrapper. What end of the wrapper is sealed up? As that air pressure started to build up, was unequal pressure. It needed to go someplace. Where did that air escape? Down that little tiny space between the inside of the wrapper and the outside of this straw. And as all that air came rushing in one direction back towards your face, what way did the wrapper go? The opposite. Woo! You guys just figured out something. Newton's third law of motion. For every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction. Nicely done. You are as smart as Isaac Newton. How cool is that? You feel empowered?
Very much.
Very much so, yeah. So we like to give the kids the opportunity to try things. Now, most of them have done the straw wrapper, they've launched it, they've blown up balloons, they let them fly around the room, all work on that same basic principle. We take things a little bit further. We actually have the kids make their own straw wrapper in the form of a paper rocket. The rocket fits nicely onto our straw, in this case a piece of PVC pipe, and instead of our lungs, we use a 2-liter bottle. Some of these rockets are capable of going well over 100 feet up into the air. Going to apologize for any damage to the ceiling. I'll take it easy. We'll apply Newton's second law of motion. The greater an object's mass, the greater the force needed to affect that mass. Which means the harder I stomp, the further this rocket's going to go. So if I don't want to damage the ceiling, do I stomp harder or softer? Count me down. 3, 2, 1. So, thanks. So rocket science. Now how many rocket scientists do we have out there? Raise those hands with confidence. Yes. This little guy, he was on a program about 5 years ago. Little Alan, we were doing our rocket science program. We were in a gym, and Alan decided that he wanted to not just launch the rocket up, he wanted to take advantage of being inside the gym on the basketball court. What did he want to do? Wanted to make a basket. If I was in a standard classroom, wouldn't have had the chance to do that. But he was so determined, I was like, you know what? You keep working on that. The rest of the class, we're going to go ahead and move on to the next thing. And Alan made a couple of extra rockets. You can see one in his back pocket there. He spent all that morning, because it was a school out day, lining up his shot. He finally got just the right angle, figured out the trajectory, figured out how much pressure he needed to put on that bottle. And he not only made a basket, which we were all watching out of the corner of our eye, and myself and all the kids went nuts for, but he made several baskets in a row. Yeah, rocket science. He was learning about laws of motion. He was learning about trajectory. He was learning about the curvature of that flight. He was learning about how much force he needed to apply, all because he was given the opportunity. Now, because this isn't just an out-of-school STEM program, science, technology, engineering, and math, sometimes we'll throw in art, make it STEAM. Sometimes we'll include reading, especially when we go out to our libraries, and it becomes STREAM. Someone once asked, why don't you throw in history, make it hamster? We'll get to it eventually. And I like throwing in history as well, because kids learn a lot of different ways. This is a 4-H program. So we're also working on a lot of the things that we hear about nowadays. Soft skills, working independently, problem solving, planning, organizing, communication, designing, testing, redesigning. Alan got to do all of those things, including communication, because when he was done, he told everyone else about his process. That was part of the deal. So he had to do a little public speaking as well. Yeah. Some of the things we see, according to the EEEK study, about 9 years ago, 2010, this study came out. More than 80% of the respondents that were doing 4-H science programs intend to finish college or continue to get more education after college. 50% of the respondents want to pursue a science career. 71% of 4-H science participants said science is one of their favorite subjects. 68% do science-related activities that are not schoolwork. Yeah, that's kind of cool. 59% said they'd like to have a job related to science when they graduate from school. All the kids that participate with our Science Out of School program are 4-H club members. We introduce each afternoon's programming with the 4-H pledge. We use that pledge as a model for the behavior and our expectations. Some of the things that also have come out: 4-H youth are 2 times as likely to participate in after-school science, engineering, or computer technology programs. 4-H youth, 17 times as likely to plan to take courses or pursue a career in science, engineering, or technology. Girls in 4-H, 2 times more likely to plan to pursue science careers. I did a talk yesterday at Carey Martin Elementary on living in space, and yesterday was the second spacewalk done by an all-female team. I shared that with my group. What do you think the response was? Yeah, especially with our young ladies, because more and more women are pursuing STEM careers. We love that. 21st century skills that we talked about: communication, collaboration, critical thinking, creativity. These are all 4-H life skills. These are all things that future employers are going to be looking for. So, it's enough for slides. Like I said, I like to demonstrate, get things done. On your pieces of paper that you've now folded, most of you have folded in half. If you haven't, go ahead and fold them in a half. And on the top half of the back side of your paper, you've got crayons. I want everyone to draw a picture of a scientist. What comes to mind when you hear the word scientist? Draw a picture of a scientist. You've got a minute, so it doesn't have to be, the best artwork ever. You're fine for right now. All right, you got about 10 seconds. No pressure. All right. Even if you're not finished, you're partway there. Raise your hand. Raise your hand if your scientist is wearing a lab coat. Raise your hand if your scientist is wearing big glasses or goggles of some kind. Raise your hand if your scientist is holding some piece of scientific equipment like a test tube or a beaker. Raise your hand if your scientist has crazy hair. Raise your hand if your scientist is a guy. Yeah, not as many as I had anticipated. But yeah, I'm often surprised at how many young ladies draw their scientist as a man. 9 times out of 10, we get those descriptions that I just gave you. And yes, some days I do come in a lab coat and a bow tie. My hair is not combed like it is today. And I kind of fit that stereotype, which is okay. Now, on the bottom part of your paper, I want you to draw another picture. And this time, and some of you may have already done this the first time, I want you to draw a picture of yourself doing science. So when asked to draw a scientist, most people, I won't even say young people, most people tend to draw those kind of cartoonish, stereotypical versions of, not just a scientist, but what kind of scientist? The mad scientist. Ugh. I hate that phrase. I like to be a happy, well-adjusted scientist. So, you're working on your picture of yourself doing science? How many of you are wearing lab coats? A few still. Because some science does take place in a lab. Some of it's messy. All the best science is messy, dirty. How many of you are outside of a lab? How many of you are outdoors? How many of you are doing something like digging in the dirt? Have you got a background in anthropology and archaeology? Yeah. How many people are working with animals? Yeah. How many people are in the water? 20 years working with marine mammals. So yeah, being in the water. What other things did you include when you drew yourself as a scientist? Who wants to share? Baking bread. Baking bread.
I was cooking.
You were cooking, yeah. Kitchen science. Absolutely. Being in a kitchen. That's a lab. You were throwing pots. Very cool. So you were on a computer. Yeah, so we could start to do some computer science, some engineering involved with that, especially if you were doing some coding and programming, things along that line. So we start getting past just, that stereotypical scientist into technology and engineering. Math comes into play all the time. Did it make a difference when you thought of yourself doing science? A little bit more personal? Did you incorporate things that you're passionate about? Yeah. Could you see yourself in that role a little bit better than just drawing generic, crazy-haired, big glasses, test tube holding, lab coat wearing guy? Yeah. We want to make that connection. We love making that connection. I need a volunteer. Actually, 2 volunteers. Who wants to come up? I love it. Queen's volunteering other people. I love it. All right. So, Deja and Lisa, come on up. All right, let's hear it for them. All right. So, Deja, Lisa, I want you to hold on to those rulers. I'm going to use a slightly larger one. But what I want you to do with your rulers is put them on top of your hands, like you were getting ready to do a slow motion clap, round of applause. Bring your hands together slowly. And what you might notice is that the weight of the ruler kind of shifts from one hand to the other. And while the weight's on one hand, that's when the other hand is able to slide. But where they come together should be right at that 6-inch or 15-centimeter mark. Correct? Yeah. All right. Now, come on over to the table. Your challenge is to take your ruler, and as long as you have at least half of the ruler sitting on the tabletop, it's going to be okay, right? What happens if we get more than half of our ruler out here in space? It's going to tip. Your challenge is to find a way to get your ruler to sit on the edge of the table, kind of like this one, with more than half of the ruler out in space. And there are some hammers and some string here. Those might help you out. All right, we have one solution. So, in this case, we've used the hammers as weights to weight down the edge of our ruler to keep more weight above the table. That's an excellent solution. But it's me, so you know I'm going to take it one step further, right? All right, let's hear it for our 2 volunteers. And we're going to go large scale. So instead of just using the rubber mallet, I'm going to use a 4-pound sledgehammer. And instead of putting the hammer on top of the table, I'm going to tie the hammer to our ruler. I'm going to put the ruler at the top of the table, but the hammer is going to be hanging underneath.
Wow.
So suddenly, our ruler becomes a counterweight. And the weight, the gravity affecting this mass of our hammer is pulling that hammer straight down. So now, because everything's attached, it's all tied together, this is all one mass. And so now the mass is going straight down. I have less than half of my board. But you know what? We can go a little bit further. And even further still. This is a round table. That's about as far as I'm going to go. So balance. Balance can be very, very important. Balancing fun, balancing interaction with learning. Having the kids be able to experience things and do it themselves and explore and come up with questions makes them better scientists. It also makes them better students. Now, we've been kind of exploring and looking at what happens when we keep things nicely balanced. How many people need balance in your life? Yeah, we need some balance. But how many people, when things get out of balance, you feel that you're being pulled or pushed in one direction more than others, find that's when things really get interesting. Things really start to happen sometimes. We want to come back to that balance. But sometimes we need some help. Sometimes we can feel completely opposite types of force. Sometimes it feels like on one side we have no pressure whatsoever or very low pressure. On the other side, we're getting pushed. We get high pressure coming up in the other direction. Uh-oh. Yeah, oh, yeah, so now, here's the debate. Toilet paper hanging to the front or back? For this experiment, hang to the front. If you have a cat at home, hang it to the back. Otherwise, you can, how many people have had that experience with a cat unrolling all the, yeah. All right, so we are going to activate our leaf blowers in just a second. When we do that, we're going to create low pressure up above, high pressure down below our roll, and the laws of physics and my engineering and duct tape hold, we might see something really cool. Kathy, are you ready? We'll find out. Let's count her down, everyone. 3, 2, 1. Oh, the trouble I could have gotten into in high school with this. All right, so, any questions? Now, how many people love science? All right, so I want to thank you for your time. I want to thank you for being such a great audience. I want to thank all of our volunteers. I want to thank all the people that are going to help clean up all the toilet paper. The washers and bits of paper, if you want, you can take those home and practice. But again, you can also do this with $1 and a quarter, or if you've got deep pockets, a $50 bill and a Cougaran, who knows? But I want to turn things back over to Carrie and Sue to help wrap things up. And while I have Sue here, just for a moment, I'm going to embarrass Sue, because I actually have been a nerd for a very, very, very long time. And as a kid growing up in the late 70s and early 80s, one of my favorite science programs was Newton's apple. And Sue was very much responsible for that program. So thank you so much for that.
We may just want to start looking like one. I'm not sure.